Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having a good day so far. So, today I just wanted to discuss something I came across today. Just a message was put out by Andrea Horwath, who is the leader of the Ontario NDP party, the New Democratic Party. So anyway, she linked in her account talking about Ford to this message here. What it talks about, it's dated today, the 18th of April. And what it says is Doug Ford's announcement today showed Ontarians exactly what his priorities lay, and it's not with everyday families and working people. Over the next 4 years, Doug Ford will cut $5.2 billion from healthcare and other public services that families count on, and give that money to profitable corporations like his company in the form of another tax cut. After 15 years of Liberal rule in Ontario, our hospitals and our children simply cannot take any more cuts. Ford will not address the 32,000 person wait list for long-term care. He will not fix the hospital's overcrowding and hallway medicine crisis, and he will never repair crumbling schools or make sure that folks can afford their prescriptions or go to the dentist. So blah, 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 blah. She's just the basic, we can't trust Ford for this. And she links to her plans. So here are her plans here. This is what she wants to do. Provide drug and dental coverage for all Ontarians, end hallway medicine and fix senior care, cut hydro bills 30% by bringing Hydro One back in public hands, take on student debt by converting loans to grants and creating thousands of student jobs, protect middle-class families by having the wealthiest people and most profitable corporations pay their fair share. So that's the Andrea Horwath plan. And all that plan tells me is spending upon spending upon spending upon spending. And this is more or less the exact same type of platform that Kathleen Wynne is unveiling. See, the Liberal parties are not even liberal anymore, and I don't know if they have been for a long time. But these days, they're just trying to outflank the NDP on the left. Their whole plan is to try and garner the far left vote. And that's why they've been unveiling so much that is so similar to the New Democratic Party. They pretty much have gone full democratic socialist. They are no longer the Liberal Party. So all they want to do is spend, 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 spend. And that is not going to help our debt. It's not going to help the job market right now, which has been going downhill, which is shit. But anyway, there's a lot wrong with this message that Andrea Horwath put out. First of all, she talks about how he's going to cut $5.2 billion from healthcare and other public services that families count on. Well, he's never stated anything of the sort. He does say that he's got to make cuts. He has to make cuts, in fact. That's no doubt, because he doesn't want to do the carbon tax. And the carbon tax in the PC platform, well, the carbon tax was going to bring in $4 billion for the PC party. And their budget, what they wanted to do, their plans relied on that. And when Doug Ford came in, he wants to scrap that. He's got to find $4 billion in order to balance his budget. So cuts, yes, are going to be necessary. But we also know anybody can tell that there is a lot of misspending that is going on inside the Ontario government right now. Millions, perhaps even billions of dollars worth of misspending going on inside the Liberal Party right now, the Ontario government. And that's really where Doug Ford has said he's going to put his sights. He's going to be talking about inefficiencies. Now, it's quite possible we will see cuts in a public sector. That is I think it is unavoidable. I think it's unavoidable that we will have to make some cuts in the public sector. However, in the healthcare department, Doug Ford has never stated this. In fact, he's actually been supportive of doctors. If we're talking about the hospitals right now, because that's one of the main ones that people are focusing on, has to do, especially in here, it said the 30,000 person wait list for long-term care. Well, one of the main problems right now when we're talking about this, especially if we're talking about Ontario has one of the worst staff to patient ratio in the developed world. There's so few medical staff on hand for how many patients there are. So that's the main problem that we're dealing with. On top of this, one thing Andrea Horwath mentioned in her plan is end hallway medicine. And that's exactly what Doug Ford has been talking about in the past. Now, this is all making reference to what Doug Ford put out today, where he said, I will bring back jobs in Ontario. The Ontario PC will cut the business tax rate from 11.5% to 10.5%. This will help businesses create good-paying jobs and attract businesses back to Ontario. Under the PCs, Ontario will be open for business, and the people who want a job will have a job. So they're trying to say that this is going to be him trying to make these tax cuts towards his friends. This is really what it's all about. It's about putting money back in the pocket. Not true. The whole point of doing this is the fact that there are businesses leaving Ontario left, right, and center, and some of them are just moving to other provinces, but many of them are moving out of country. Many of them are going south, down to America. Others are buying out to Chinese businessmen would be one. So lowering the business tax rate is actually a necessity. Lowering it is required if we want to bring back a competitive market in Ontario, and that's how you create jobs, a competitive market. Right now, we are not in a competitive market. Right now, we've racked up so much debt, it's incredible. Right now, as it stands, California has about the entire population of Canada living in. There's something about somewhere between 35 to 40 million people living in California, and it has about $100 million debt, if I remember correctly. No, sorry, $100 billion debt right now. What the hell is it? Anyway, right now we have about 3 times. As it stands, we have about 3 times the debt that California does just in Ontario, and we have about 1/10 of the population at best. But this has all been driven up by Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty and what they have done over the last 15 years. Now, the media is also taking a stand against Doug Ford when we're talking about this sort of thing. For instance, he talks about how he wants to give minimum wage earners 0% income tax. And he said, and this is saying how it leaves minimum wage earners worse off. Doing the math reveals Liberal NDP plan for $15 an hourly rate puts the money back in workers' pockets. So we're just gonna here we go. So here they have laid out what Doug Ford's plan is compared to what the NDP and what the Liberals want to do. So they're saying that you will only make a savings of $859 under this. And they're saying under the Liberal and NDP plan, you'll get more money. He's also planning to freeze the minimum wage at $14 an hour if he gets in. He's going to raise it to $15 an hour next year. So they're saying if he does that, everybody in the minimum wage gets a $2,000 increase, and it's actually putting more money in their pockets. As this article says, at the current rate of $14 an hour, a full-time minimum wage earner has a gross annual income of $29,120. Factoring in the basic tax deduction available to all employees, that person would pay about $859 in provincial income tax. That would be the maximum tax credit available under Ford's plan. Raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour gives the same full-time worker an extra $2,080 in gross annual income. After subtracting federal and provincial income tax, Canada Pension Plan, and employment insurance premiums, that worker takes home an extra $1,553 a year under the Liberal and NDP plan. Well, that sounds all nice and dandy if we're just taking it at face value, but what you're not considering is that what ended up happening when we raised the $14 minimum wage hours, first, people moved out. We lost a lot of jobs in Ontario in the month of January 2018, the first month that Kathleen Wynne introduced the $14 minimum wage, which spiked from, I think it was around $11.25, maybe $11.50, and it spiked immediately to $14 an hour. Many people have lost benefits at work because they cannot afford some businesses cannot afford to give them benefits. On top of this, people can't afford to have on full-time employees anymore. A lot of people have been talking about how ever since this has come into place, however since the minimum wage has gone up, there's actually less work available for them, that their bosses are cutting hours and are stretching work among fewer employees. This is exactly what happens every time. And if you're going to raise it this much, if you're going to raise it to $14 an hour, you're jumping whatever, $2.50, almost $3. Then of course it's going to set, people are going to get strained instantly. Businesses are going to get strained instantly. They've essentially got to completely rewrite their business plan. They've got to rewrite how many employees they can afford to pay, how many hours per week can afford to have overall of staff working. These are all things that an employer has to take into consideration. So when suddenly you jumps up a couple bucks an hour per employee, if they have a lot of employees, that's a lot of extra money. So they're not taking that in consideration when they're talking about this. Now, when we're talking about Doug Ford's plan to cut the income tax for anyone under minimum wage, I am in favor of this because, again, it puts more money into our own pockets to make our own decisions with this. Really, what we do in the end of the day with our taxes is the government repays us more or less for a lot of our expenditures made. Well, why do we have a middleman in this? Why do we have a middleman that is repaying us for amounts paid? For instance, you go to the pharmacy and you buy it with your own money and then you reclaim it on your taxes. What's even the point at that point? At that mark, I might as well keep the money in my own pocket instead of just paying it out in taxes just so it gets refunded to me. It also just complicates the whole issue. And it says, Ford is trying to disguise his plan as something that would help low-wage workers, Labor Minister Kevin Flynn said Tuesday. He's reaching right into their pockets and taking money right out of their wallets, Flynn told reporters at Queen's Park. It's not helping poor working people in the province of Ontario at all. It's helping the rich people that Mr. Ford seems to like to associate with, he said. It just doesn't wash. It doesn't make any sense. I have one question for Doug Ford. Why is he ripping off the lowest paid workers in this province? Said NDP leader Andrea Horwath. Well, I love this statement up here. He's reaching into our pockets and taking money right out of their wallets, because that's pretty much what the government has been doing for years now. There's always another tax that they have to add on. Always another reason they have to tax us. And now that we have a man that's come in and says, well, instead, I'm not going to increase taxes, I'm going to cut taxes, suddenly they're saying that he's being unfair, that he's taking money out of our pockets. How does that make sense? He's trying to keep more money in our pockets. And I do not trust these numbers at all when they talk about this is the sort of tax we're going to get in return. I don't trust it whatsoever. And if we're talking here, he says amount exempt from provincial income tax, $12,105. I have no idea who the hell is getting $12,000 exempted off of their taxes. If somebody has had that much exempted off their taxes who is a low income earner, like, please speak up, because I'm a low income earner and I've never had anything remotely close. So I don't know where this numbers are apparently coming from. But even the Toronto Star is kind of jumping on this too. When he's talking about the income for small earners, he says it'll save them $800. That too sounds good until the slightest bit of rudimentary math is applied. A full-time minimum wage worker makes $28,000. It basically goes along with the same thing that we heard before. That it's talking about how they'll get about another $2,000 in their pocket. Yeah, it's not going to work that way. Because every time, the more that a business has to pay each employee, the less employees they're going to hire, the less amount of time they're going to be working. In fact, right now, I don't know how new this is, but if you're trying to apply for some jobs, they're asking for personality tests. And these are like Walmart. These are minimum wage jobs that really should not be asking this, but they are. They want like personality tests, profiles of the person now, not just a resume. And that's sort of the market we got into now, where these sort of jobs actually now are that competitive, where you have to fill out a profile. So here we have when they're talking about the provincial taxes. So when we're talking about the provincial tax to begin with, Ontario, the lowest bracket is only 5.05%, and that is actually one of the lowest inside the province. Actually, British Columbia 5.06, Northwest Territories 5.9, Nunavut is the lowest with 4%. Where are we? Here we go. And then they're starting to. And if we want to go back to the issue of healthcare, Doug Ford has addressed this before. Here it is. So during a visit to Thunder Bay, Ford also said he would incentivize doctors practicing in North Ontario by cutting their provincial taxes significantly, right down to 0%. So he's giving more incentive for doctors to go out there. He's giving more incentive for people to come to the areas that are most effective. If he used to do this on the East Coast, over in the Maritimes, this might help with some of the problems down there, perhaps. But it's also incentivizing people to get into the industry. This is one of the big problems we have right now, is getting people into the industry. This is the same problem we have in trades, is trying to get people to go into the trades. Most people don't want to do the jobs. It's not because we don't have the people, it's lack of interest. And if we're talking on here, Ford said if he was elected premier, the healthcare sector would get resources to reduce wait times and curb the practice of putting stretchers in hallways. Exactly what Andrea Horwath said he was not going to address. He said, help is on the way, resources are on the way, and I promise your voices will be heard, he said. Well, a lot of the doctors right now are pissed off with the Liberal Party. They find that the Liberal Party has abandoned them. And all that the NDP wants to do and all that the Liberals want to do is throw money at the problem. But Ford wants to throw resources. Now, he doesn't specify. But of course there's going to be money thrown into that, would be without a doubt. But I actually think that when you're talking about resources getting put into the sector, resources also could mean people. This is what I think his plan is. I think he's going to find some way to incentivize people to go into these industries. Something that they're trying to do with trades as well right now. Incentivize people, give them a reason to want to go into the trades. And I think this is what Ford's plan is. Now, again, he hasn't stated. He just said resources are on the way. But Ford is a populist. He knows what the people want. He knows what's pissing people off. And he has to rely on those promises. That's the problem with being a populist, is you get into office because you're going on what the people want, what the people are going to hire you to do. It actually is one of the more real politician positions to take. That's what these people are supposed to be. They're supposed to be our elected representatives. But a lot of time when they get in office, they don't represent us. They represent themselves or the lobbyist group that happens to fund them. I'm sorry, the lobbyist group that happens to get their ear. So if Ford is to betray these promises and he doesn't make the changes that he's enacting, then people aren't going to support him. He actually does have to prove to people this. Because while he has his base that believe in what he wants to do, and we believe he's going to make the proper changes to our country, on top of that, he actually has to impress the rest of the provinces. He can't just rely on his base. It's not going to be enough. He has to garner the support of the regular people out there. And that also includes the people that are not really politically involved. The people that kind of stick their head out around election time and sort of smell the air and figure out which way the winds are blowing. He needs to garner that support as well. So, this is why I actually do have confidence in Ford, is because I believe he is going to come in and he is going to enact these changes that are necessary for our province. And we do have to maybe make some cuts somewhere. That is understandable. I do think there will be cuts. But Ford is not going to be dumb about it. He's not going to make cuts where he has support. He's not going to make cuts in the healthcare sector because I believe, I'd have to double check again, I believe he's garnered a lot of doctor support and other healthcare officials. But then right now, a lot of people are pissed off with the healthcare system in Ontario. So if he was not to do anything about this, that would be a big campaign promise broken. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up to you and just show how once again how the misinformation goes around. And right now it's clear that they've set their sights on Doug Ford, And he's the biggest threat right now to the establishment. He's the biggest threat for undoing the liberal agenda. Everything that Kathleen Wynne has spent her time putting in place, everything that Dalton McGuinty spent time putting in place, everything that Justin Trudeau is currently trying to fight for and put in place, he's a danger to that. Same with someone like Jason Kenney. He's also a danger to that. So that's why they've set their sights on people like them. All right, guys, you have a great night. I'll see you guys soon.